Hi guys, welcome back to ladensercrotchets. If you're new to the channel, you're welcome. My name is Liz. In this tutorial, we're going to make this skirt. It's a very simple skirt using the granny stitch. You can work this as a mini skirt or you can go on and extend to get a maxi skirt. So let's get into the tutorial. You'll need the following materials. A medium weight yarn. I'm using Winter King, which is a Kenyan brand. A 4mm crochet hook. A measuring tape. A darning needle, a pair of scissors, and 2 stitch markers. We begin with a slip knot. Then chain 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then pull out the hook from the 5th chain and put it back into the 1st chain. Then put it back into the 5th chain and continue chaining. Now the reason why I work this way is to ensure that the chain that I'm working will not be twisted when I'll be connecting the two ends, because at the end I should connect in order to form a round. At this point I have 10 chains, so I'll just keep going with the chains, and you want to chain until you get the waist measurement of your skirt, but then you should ensure that the chain that you'll have gotten will be able to go over your shoulders. So just keep chaining until you get a chain that fits onto your waist but is able to go over your shoulders. So like for example, I'm working a waist of 26, but then I'll not just chain 26, I'm going to chain 30, because that is what should be able to go over the shoulders of the person I'm making this skirt for. I've started by chaining 71, and I'm going to get my measuring tape and confirm the length. And this takes me to 13 when slightly stretched, which is equivalent to 26 when 13 is multiplied by 2. And so I'm going to add 10 more chains in order for this skirt to be able to go over the shoulders. That gets me to 81 chains, and when I measure the 81 chains, that is going to give me 15 multiplied by 2, that should be 30. So instead of working 26, I'll work with 30 on the waist. Then I'm going to pull through the first chain to complete the round. Then to begin row 1, chain 2, and the chain 2 will act as the turning chain and not a stitch. Then I'm going to work into the next chain with 1 double crochet. For a double crochet, you yarn over, place your hook into the stitch, then pull through 2 and pull through the remaining 2. So then I'm going to go over all the chains and place 1 double crochet till I get back to the first chain. I'm going to place the last double crochet into the last chain, then slip stitch on top of the chain 2 to complete the round, like that. Then chain 2, and we're going to work a front post double crochet. So that means you yarn over, insert your hook in between the chain 2 and the first double crochet, like this, then grab a loop, pull it up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2. That's a front post double crochet. Then next we're going to work a back post. We insert the hook from behind the second double crochet, then we go round the double crochet and pull up a loop, then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2. Next we work a front post, we work a back post in the next stitch, a back post double crochet. Next we work a front post double crochet, and then we're going to repeat till we get to the end. Alternate between a front post and a back post double crochet till you get to the last stitch. I'm coming to the end of row 1 and I'm just alternating the back post and the front post. I'm in the last stitch and I'm going to place a front post into it, then slip stitch onto the chain 2 that we started with. So do a slip stitch, then you're going to chain 2. Start with a front post. Where there was a front post, you're going to place a front post. Where there was a back post, you're going to do another back post there in row 2. And again, keep alternating till you get to the end of row 2. I'll just keep going with the rows until I get a total of 5 rows. I'm in row 3 right now. At the end of the 5th row, I'm going to do the slip stitch on top of the chain 2, and I'm done with the ribbing of the waist. So now we're going to begin working the main part of the skirt. This is what you should have. Next, we're going to chain 2 in order to begin the main part of the skirt. So chain 2 and turn. We're going to work, that's our first double crochet, but then we're not going to work into that very first stitch. We're going to skip the second stitch and work a double crochet into the third stitch, and then another double crochet into the same stitch. Yarn over, skip the next stitch, place 2 double crochets into the stitch that follows, skip the next stitch and place 2 double crochets next, skip 2 double crochets in the stitch that follows, and we're going to repeat this till we get to the first stitch. When you get into the first stitch, we're going to place a double crochet so that we can get 2 double crochets into that very first stitch. So now just keep repeating the 2 double crochets and skipping a stitch in between, but there is no chain, and keep going all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end of row 1. At the end, I'm going to place my last double crochet into the chain, into the stitch where we have the chain 2. Then slip stitch on top of the chain 2. And we are done with row 1. Next, we're going to determine the points of increase in order to achieve the hip measurements, and this is what I do. So holding my work like this, I'll just get this one end and bring it to the point where we have the first stitch, and this gives me the points of increases. So I'll get my stitch markers and mark these 2 ends. So one stitch marker goes to one side, mark right there, and that is the point where we're going to increase. Then you're going to mark the other side, so now you want to make sure that the chains, the stitches on top and the stitches at the bottom are equal. So count your stitches, make sure they are the same. chain 2 and place a double crochet into that gap that you can see right there, and the chain 2 together with the double crochet will make 2 double crochets. Skip over to the next gap and place 2 double crochets. Go into the gap that follows, place 2 double crochets, and we're going to repeat this till we get to the gap that has a stitch marker. When you get to the stitch marker, just pull it out, and into that gap we're going to place 2 double crochets, chain 1, go back into the same gap with 2 double crochets, and that's our first increase. Then you're going to get your stitch marker and mark that point where we've chained 1. Then you're going to continue with 2 double crochets into each gap until you get to the next stitch marker. So just 2 double crochets into every gap. I'm in the next stitch marker, so I'm going to place 2 double crochets there after removing the stitch marker, of course. Place 2 double crochets, chain 1, place 2 more double crochets into the same gap, and then mark the chain 1 stitch. I'm going to reconnect some more yarn and then continue from there. After the increase, I'm going to get the stitch marker and continue marking that stitch where we've chained 1, and then continue to the end with 2 double crochets into every gap. Once you get to the last gap, place 2 double crochets into that last gap. Then we're going to slip stitch on top of the chain 2 to complete row 2. Then chain 2 and turn to begin row 3. And from this point, we're going to be turning at the beginning of each new row. Begin in the chain, in the gap, place 1 double crochet, so that will be 2 double crochets. Then go into the next gap, place 2 double crochets, work 2 double crochets into the next gap, 2 double crochets into the gap that follows, and into all the gaps till you get to the stitch marker. Once you get to the stitch marker, just pull it out, place 2 double crochets into that stitch, chain 1, place another 2 double crochets into the same stitch. Get the marker and mark the chain 1 stitch. After marking the stitch, just go on, work 2 double crochets into the next gap, and work 2 double crochets into each of the gaps until you get to the other stitch marker. When you get to the other stitch marker, you're going to pull it out and increase the same way we've been increasing, and then I'll meet you at the end of this row. At the end of the row, do a slip stitch on top of the chain 2 to complete the row. And this is the end of row 3. Then we're going to chain 2 and turn to begin row 4. Now from this point we're going to work a double crochet, then a double crochet into the next gap, 2 of them, 2 double crochets into the gap that follows, 2 double crochets into the next gap. When you get to the stitch marker, ensure that you place an increase and keep going with the rows of increase until you get your hip measurements. When you're measuring the hip measurement, this is how you do it. So you place your skirt like this, then get the measuring tape. Place the measuring tape on one end, and then we're going to measure like this without stretching. I'm at 14 multiplied by 2, that's 28. Now I'm going to give this a bit of a stretch, because when you're measuring the hips we stretch, but not too much because you don't want your skirt to be too tight. When I stretch, I'm getting to 17, which is 34 when multiplied by 2, and I'm working a hip measurement of 38, so I want to get to 19. Now I'll keep increasing until I get to 19, and then after that I'll stop increasing and just work without the increase. So just go on increasing in every row until you get your hip measurement. I'll meet you back here once I get my hip measurement. Have done an increase for a total of 4 rows and I've hit my hip measurements. So to confirm, you're just going to take your measuring tape and measure from one stitch marker to the next. So from here, without stretching, I'm at 16.5. When I stretch, it will get me to 19. When I stretch a little bit, but then it can go up to 40 inches. So I've gotten to my hip measurements, and therefore I do not need the stitch markers anymore. So I'll just pull them out. And now each of the gaps is just going to get 2 double crochets, no increase at all. So beginning from here, chain 2, that's our first double crochet, then turn and begin in that gap with 1 double crochet to make 2, then 2 double crochets into the next gap, 2 into the next, and now keep repeating these rows of 2 double crochets into every gap until you get the length of your skirt before we work the slit part. Now I'm going to work for a total of 12 inches in the length. Then after the 12 inches, that is when I'm going to work the slit part. So right now we're just placing 2 double crochets into every gap. At the chain 1 where we were doing the increase, and right there I'm only going to place 2 double crochets, then skip over to the next gap and place 2 double crochets, then keep going. I'll meet you once I get to a length of 12 inches. When you're measuring the length, you do not stretch your work. So this is how we measure the length while holding our skirt like this. Get the measuring tape and measure the length. Right now I'm at around 4.5, so I'll keep going till I get to 12. After 23 rows, I have my 12 inches, the length of 12 inches of the skirt. So now I'm going to chain 1 at this point, chain 1 and cut off the yarn, pull through, fasten. This is the back side of the skirt, so I'm going to turn the skirt to the right side, then you're going to determine the side where you want your slit to be. So I want mine to be on this side, and therefore from this corner I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 gaps, turn my work like this, then I'll begin from the 6th gap right here, begin with a slip knot. I'm going to reconnect the yarn, then pull it through like this, then chain 2. Actually the first chain is for slip stitching like that, then I'm going to chain 2, go back into that gap with 1 double crochet, and together with the chain that's going to be 2 double crochets. Then I'm going to place 2 double crochets into each of the gaps all the way around till I get right here. When I get to this point, I'll not reconnect, but I'll chain and turn. So I'll meet you once I get here to show you how to work the next row. I'm in row 24 right now, so I'll meet you at the end of row 24. So now this right here is the last gap, so I'm going to place 2 double crochets there, and instead of connecting the way we've been connecting, we're going to chain 2 and turn to begin the next row. We're going to begin in the first gap, and we're going to place 2 double crochets there, then 2 double crochets into each of the other gaps, and I'll meet you at the end of this row, which is row 25, or row 2 after the gap. Let's call it row 2, which is, we are counting from the slit part. So now just work 2 double crochets into each gap, then I'll meet you at the end. I'm in the last gap, and I'm going to place 2 double crochets there. Then the last stitch is going to be on top of the chain 2. So yarn over and place a double crochet on top of that first chain 2. And that's the end of row 2 after the slip, after the slit, that is. Now chain 2 and turn to begin row 3. We begin row 3 in this very first gap, but then we're going to place just 1 double crochet, so that together with the chain makes. Then skip over to the next gap and place 2 double crochets, then work like that till you come to the end. I'll meet you at the end to show you how to complete row 3, and then I'll let you complete the skirt before we come back and do an edging on the slit. So I'll meet you at the end of row 3 and show you how to begin row 4. Then you'll be able to complete the remaining part of the skirt. So we have these 2 double crochets, and there should be a gap right here. So we're just going to place 1 double crochet into it, then 1 double crochet on top of the chain 2 to complete row 3. Then we're going to chain 2 and turn to begin row 4. We're going to work row 4 the same way we've worked row 2, and then the next one we'll work it the same as row 3. So we're going to be alternating between row 2 and row 3 until we get the full length of the skirt that you want. Now right now at a length of, let's see, so don't worry how the slit looks right now. We're going to correct that to have it looking better than that. Right now I'm at a length of almost 14 inches. I'll keep going till I get to 17, because that's the full length of the skirt that I want. And once I'm done with 17 inches in the length, I'll come back and show you how to work the final part together with the slit part. Right here I've worked a total of 10 rows from this point to get to 17 inches in total, measuring from the waist, that is. So this right here is my full length, the full length of my skirt, and we are done. What we're going to do is the last row, which is the edging, and to do that you need to make sure that when you chain 2, you're going to start working from the right side of the skirt. So chain 2 and turn, and make sure you're working from the right side of the skirt. Then we're going to begin from this gap right here, and in that gap we're going to place 3 double crochets. So 1, 2 and 3. Then we're going to skip the gap that follows, then work a slip stitch into the next gap like that. Then chain 2 at that point, go back into that gap and place 3 double crochets. Then skip this gap, work a slip stitch into the next gap, then chain 2 and place 3 double crochets into that gap. Now skip the next one, slip stitch into the one that follows, chain 2, 3 double crochets. And this is what you should have. This is the edging, and we're going to repeat that till we get to this point. I'm going to work into the last gap, and that's the end. Then I'm going to chain 1, this is what you should have at the bottom of the skirt. So now after chaining 1, I'm going to work on the slit part. So I'll just turn my work to the slit part, and then after chaining 1, I'm going to work into the first row, this one right here, and place 2 single crochets there. So 1 and 2. Then into the next row, 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. Place 2 single crochets into the row that follows, then 2 single crochets into all the rows. This is the last row. So right there I'll place 2 single crochets, then there's these 2 double crochets that are here. I'm going to work a slip stitch in between the 2 double crochets in the middle. So slip stitch and turn to the other side. Then on the other side we start on the rows right here. I'll work over these and just weave it in. So in this first row, I'm going to place 2 single crochets. Two single crochets into the next row, and go all the way down with 2 single crochets into each of the rows. Then you're going to get into the chain 2 that you started with, place 2 single crochets, the last single crochet, then chain 1 and cut off the yarn. Pull through and fasten. So you're going to get your darning needle and weave in all the ends that are left hanging So as you can see, this is how the slit will look like. It doesn't look as wide as it was right here. So I'll weave in all the ends, and then I'm going to work a drawstring that I'll attach on the waist part. For the drawstring, I get 2 strands of the yarn and begin with a slip knot. Then I'm going to do a chain of 200. After the 200 chains, you're just going to cut off the yarn, then pull through and fasten. And now we're going to attach it to the waist. Then you need to determine the front part of your skirt, the middle part of the front part of your skirt. Then grab the yarn needle, put the strap through the needle. Then we're going to begin weaving it inside the waist right here. And then just go all the way around. So right there, the skirt is ready. You can go on, try it on. So thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the tutorial. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, comment, share, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and click on the thanks button and leave any gift that you would wish to. And see you in the next tutorial.